the 29th, 1913, on the stage at the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées in Paris, these moments from the Rite of Spring were arguably the most dramatic the ballet world had ever seen, and its power to shock remains even today. It was one of the defining moments in the lives of three of the most brilliant and radical artists of the 20th century, all of them Russian. Dancer and choreographer Vaslav Nijinsky, composer Igor Stravinsky, and impresario Sergei Diaghilev. Their collaboration, as well as those of other great artists, composers, dancers and designers, made Sergei Diaghilev's Ballet Russes the most influential ballet company of the 20th century.
The effect of Diaghilev is everywhere.
There was the most tremendous sexy excitement about all things Russian and artistic.
Diaghilev was the boss of everything and everyone, and every detail of every single thing.
Diaghilev is a terrible man to work for because he was 100% the Ballet Russes.
Diaghilev saved Western ballet. It's very hard to understand why Nijinsky or how Nijinsky became a choreographer. In none of his works did he use conventional ballet technique. The movement was very strange and radical for ballet dancers, and so he was not popular with dancers. Most of them absolutely loathed his choreography, hated it, thought it made them look terrible, felt that it was impossible to learn, felt that he was making ballet ugly. But as for why he wanted these unballetic movements, he was an experimentalist. Why did Picasso do what he did? You know, why did Picasso put the woman's nose in her armpit?
Designed by Leon Bakst, Nijinsky's first ballet was a simple story of an adolescent fawn responding to a group of nymphs appearing out of a forest.
The whole action was from one wing to the other. It was a very, very difficult position to hold. Feet both parallel were going in one direction, and the body was facing the audience, and the arms were facing the audience, but you walked on one line. But at that time, one only had learned the classical technique, and so it's the more astonishing that Nijinsky should have been able to think out a new position in which he wants to do the movements and move in them.
Rather than being teamed up with Stravinsky immediately, Diaghilev and Nijinsky chose an existing and melodic score by Debussy.
His music was still radical, but in a nice way, and not in the brutal way of the Stravinsky. I mean, and therefore it was less noticed, and especially Après-midi d'un Faune. The work of Debussy was known for a long time already. The Debussy piece was performed 1894, so that was no problem at all to listen to this piece of Debussy.
From our perspective, it seems pretty. In fact, it would not have seemed pretty when Debussy was doing what he was doing. He was being deliberately mischievous. He wanted to create an atmosphere of sensuality. If you went to a concert in your best bib and tucker, you did not expect to have your senses tingled in the way Debussy had in mind.
Diaghilev knew what was good for business. Quite often the theme is sex. The big scandalous example is L'Après-midi d'un Faune, where a fawn wakes and for the first time discovers sensual adventure. He sees nymphs, can't get anywhere even with a leading nymph. He has a very striking duet with her, but it doesn't quite lead to eroticism. So when she's gone, he satisfies himself with her scarf and has this extraordinary gesture of fetishism where he lies down on her scarf and achieves satisfaction that way. End of ballet, shock, horror.
The business at the end, that was something else. Getting up the stairs and getting up the thing and lying on it and the hands at the end, it was quite something. When I saw it for the first time, I thought, ooh, this is a bit much, but there you are.
That certainly was very shocking. The ending and the scandal that that provoked clouded the rest of the ballet.
Whilst Nijinsky's choreography for Afternoon of a Fawn may have challenged Parisian audiences, it did little to prepare them for his first collaboration with Stravinsky, the now infamous Rite of Spring. It was this work, based around a pagan ritual with its anti-ballet dance vocabulary and unimaginable music, that caused the famous riot in Paris on the opening night at the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées in 1913. As the ballet took shape, Diaghilev, nervous of what his two star talents might come up with, was anxious to hear Stravinsky's music.
Very much this corner. Was rather a new chord, you know, 8 notes chord, but the accents were even more new, and the accents were really the foundation of the whole thing. When I finished composing the Rite of Spring, I played it for Diaghilev. And I started to play him this chord, 59 times the same chord. Diaghilev was a little bit surprised. He didn't want to offend me. He asked me only one thing, which was very offending. He asked me, will it last a very long time this way? And I said, till the end, my dear. And he was silent, because he understood that the answer was serious.
Clearly, Diaghilev had second thoughts about the Rite of Spring, about its complexity. Even he, I think, must have been shocked when he began hearing some of Stravinsky's musical sketches.
One of the remarkable things about the Rite of Spring is that it's still shocking now, nearly 100 years later. Now, there are very few things that ever occur in art or any other field which are still shocking 100 years later. I mean, Lady Chatterley's lover to the modern reader, big deal. But the Rite of Spring, when you hear it, it is still very, very challenging.
The irregularity of the rhythms, especially of some dance, not always, but I mean of some dances, with 4 beats, 5 beats, 3 beats, 2 beats, so on and so on. And that's really, at this time, it was absolutely new.
Stravinsky's score was so complex, and the dancers were having such difficulties interpreting Nijinsky's choreography that they clearly needed help. Diaghilev hired Marie Rambert, who not only performed in the ballet, but because of her highly developed musicality, helped the dancers with the unusual music and movement.
Up to then, the ballet used to dance mostly, in general, the ballet, say in Moscow, if they danced to music of Puny or Mingus, it was echtata, 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 echtata. It wasn't even called echtata. That is quite obvious rhythms. And here came the score of Sacre before them, where you had to count 2 against 3 or 3 against 4, and then suddenly a crotchet equaled a quaver.
That is what I want.
Too fast. That's what I wrote.
Too fast for my steps.
Then change your steps.
Change your tempo.
Perhaps if we tried a little faster.
And there are too many steps anyway. I imagine this section to be almost motionless, but you've turned it into a jumping match.
I think, Mr. Stravinsky.
And what's more, if you knew anything about choreography, you would know that it shouldn't always reiterate the music, but sometimes work against it. It should realize its own form, but this, it's barely recognizable as dance. Wouldn't you agree, mademoiselle?
Well, I see why you might say that, sir, although I do think that Mr. Nijinsky, by re-emphasizing your beat, is doubling the impact of your music. You see, sir, what you have written is so innovative, so new, that Vaslav, in order to do it justice, has to find equally new forms of expression. It's like nothing we've ever seen before, because it's expressing something we've never heard before. Perhaps if you were to play, and Vaslav were to count, the correct tempo would emerge.
Okay. I count to 25, we see where we come out.
Even if we come out together, doesn't mean we've been together on the way.
For Nijinsky to help him analyze the score of Stravinsky and to organize rehearsals. But she became something other. She really became his comrade in arms. She understood the resistance of the dancers. She tried to tease them out of their resistance because they loved her.
It was at this time that Madame Romberg saved our lives. At least she saved the lives of many people. And we used to run around with little pieces of paper with all the accents all written down. Stamp and run and stamp again, you know. And she was always there to interpret.
Nijinsky said, this can't be quicker and this can't be slower. I know what the dancers can do. There was an epic battle between them. Stravinsky sat at the piano and trying to make an orchestra. He stamped with his feet and banged with his hands on the piano here and there and shouted and sang and so on. And, you know, I can't remember who won.
And we go up on our toes, like birds with long, long legs. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very nice. Good. Again.
The Sacre du Printemps is really going into anthropology. It's as if Nijinsky and Stravinsky are saying, you thought the Pavlovian dances was primitive, we'll show you real primitivism, we'll go back before there was society.
Was not relying upon what the dancers knew. In other words, what they did in the studio or what they had done in Fokine ballets or petit pas ballets. So he had to fight the habits of the body.
His dancers' feet weren't pointed or turned out. They were pigeon-toed, flexed feet. There was no attempt to make graceful and beautiful lines. Everything was stark and fraught and primitive.
As the ballet progressed, the first night audience started to voice their displeasure. Although there are conflicting accounts of the scale of the riot, the aggressive atmosphere created by constant heckling made it extremely challenging for the dancers on stage.
Diaghilev in advance said, whatever happens, the conductor must go on playing and we go on dancing. It was terribly difficult to hear the orchestra because of all that noise in the audience. And Nijinsky stood in the wings counting out 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. She had to stand for some perhaps 17.5 bars or 13.25 bars on the spot with her feet standing, her hands under her chin and trembling like that. So somebody in the audience from the gallery shouted, "Un docteur!" And somebody else shouted, "Un dentiste!" And somebody else shouted, "Deux dentistes!" And of course lots of people laughed, others shrieked. The pandemonium was absolute.
People like to think that the premiere was a spontaneous riot. It wasn't at all. Diaghilev spent 5 weeks hard preparing the Parisians to hate this work. And though there are various stories of how he reacted, some of them say he wept and recited Pushkin in tragedy when Le Sacre du Printemps seemed to be a fiasco. Stravinsky said not at all. He took us out for a good dinner, Nijinsky and me, and said, just what I wanted.
First advance was, of course, the Sacre du Printemps. That was a scandalous advance. The big scandal of the Sacre du Printemps was a historical scandal. The public, they shouted, they whistled, and so on, just from the beginning. And then they saw also what Nijinsky did, the scandal doubled. Then, when the curtain opened on a group of knock-kneed and long-breasted lolitas jumping up and down, danse des adolescentes, the storm broke. It was full of very noisy public. I went out, I said, go to hell. Excuse me, Monsieur Hubin. They killed for Scheherazade or for Cleopatra. And they saw the Sacre du Printemps. They were very shocked. They were very naive and stupid people. It has nothing to do with the art.
needs a dentist.
Needs a dentist?
She needs a psychiatrist!